Welcome to Conversations with Cox and Kielseth, and to be more specific, that is filmmaker Alex Cox and myself, film curator Pablo Kielseth. Alex will join us by phone from his home in Oregon, while I sneak away from my office to call him from one of the projection booths used by the International Film Series, which has been screening foreign and independent movies at CU Boulder since 1941. We will keep our chats to about 20 minutes as we discuss whatever movie-related topics grab our fancy. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, action.
Harvey was a friend of mine. Used to take me fishing all the time. Used to throw the ball for me when I was just a kid. They say he shot the president, but I don't think he did. Hey, Todd.
Thank you. Yo.
Todd, always nice to hear from you. You know, I was just about to open my beer, and I just wanted to let folks know that one of the things that I feel that we're doing here is that when you were both of you in Boulder, we would meet once a week at least to have beers at our favorite watering holes or breweries, wherever. And now that you're thousands of miles away, I feel like we're able to continue the tradition a little bit virtually through these podcasts and these conversations. So I'm going to open up a beer that I got courtesy of Ron Wright. Yeah. And he got it from a local brewery.
What is it?
Well, let me read the label here. It is from Vision Quest, and I think they're located out like Foothills and Pearlish about. Here in Boulder, and it's a Northeastern IPA called a Swoop Umax. A little bit of it's a mouthful, both in terms of saying the name, but hopefully also in terms of tasting it. So I'm pouring it right now. And Alex, are you having anything? Or?
I have a Pearl beer, as usual, I'm afraid.
Your standard.
Yes. Yeah. Todd has a glass of
Côte de Rhone.
Nice.
Yeah, and Pablo, I will never forget how kind it was of you and Alex to actually move your meeting every week to a restaurant where I could have wine instead of having to look at the beer all the time. Thank you.
That's right. Yeah, well, no problem. I mean, Alex and I like our IPAs and stouts, and you like your wines. And so that's an easy enough accommodation here in Boulder. So, yeah.
So anyway, we were watching a DVD. I got sent a box of like 183 DVDs from Studio Canal, I guess because they were closing the warehouse in England because of Brexit. And so they sent out all of these DVDs to people to just check out our huge selection of English DVDs. And I got movies from the 1930s through to the late 1980s. And we have been dipping into this selection of DVDs that we got for free. And the other night we saw
I'm All Right, Jack,
which neither of us
Peter Sellers
before. Yeah, with Peter
Sellers and Terry Thomas and
Ian Carmichael.
Ian Carmichael's the hero. Yeah.
Irene Handel and
Margaret Rutherford plays the Duchess. She was fabulous. They were all wonderful. It was
Jean Mesurier with the Twitch.
Yeah, they were really, really
it's a
good.
very good cast.
It's fabulously acted. It's fabulously art directed. Really, the costumes are great. Everything was the script was wonderful. The whole thing was great.
We're clearly we've got kind of a Peter Sellers theme today because I got on the Criterion Channel to watch the Ghost of Peter Sellers documentary, and I just right before calling you, I got on the Wikipedia page for Peter Sellers, and they cluster it like there's early performances 1935 to 1939, blah blah blah, and then you get to there's the early post-war career in The Goon Show, 46 to 65. And the next category is I'm All Right, Jack, and early years in film, 56 through 59. And just from reading from there, apparently that was just a huge success. Now, I haven't seen I'm All Right, Jack, and that's next in the queue. But I'm excited to hear that you guys saw it and that you liked it. What else was great about it besides, the acting and the costumes and all that? What rung out from that movie?
It's a really clever political satire about the arms trade and business and the unions, and the style of acting is a kind of larger than life, kind of grandiose acting, I guess, like you see in Kind Hearts and Coronets and some of these other British films where everything's just about 110%. Especially Peter Sellers' character when he plays the leader of the union, Kite.
And he also plays a bit part right at the beginning. And Alex rightly pointed out while we were watching it that it looked very like Lolita, and Dr. Strangelove, and the form of acting was very like it as well. So he looked it up, and what did you find?
And that, well, it was the first time I think that Peter Sellers had done multiple roles in a film.
Uh-huh.
Which obviously became the selling point for Kubrick when he was doing Lolita, and Dr. Strangelove was the idea that Peter Sellers would appear repeatedly throughout the movie in different roles. But also, we were looking at the thing and the visual aspect of it, and we're thinking, boy, there's a perfect transition from I'm All Right, Jack to Lolita. The visual aspect, the look of the film is very like what Kubrick would do in Lolita a few years later, both in terms of framing and also in terms of the art department. So I'm thinking, could it possibly be the same DP? So I go on IMDb, look it up. No, it's a different DP every time. But the art director of I'm All Right, Jack is the art director of Lolita. And the editor of I'm All Right, Jack is the editor of Lolita and Dr. Strangelove.
And you can really tell that Kubrick did a tribute to I'm All Right, Jack, as he so often gave tribute to people he worked with by putting his own name on it and crossing their name off the script, which is what he did to Terry Southern, I believe, on Dr. Strangelove. He whited it. Well, someone whited it out. I don't know who.
On your copy of the script, maybe Pablo did it.
I didn't white anything out. And I don't recall ever, lending out that script to anyone except you, Alex. So,
well, it was definitely a director that did it, so it was either me or Stanley.
Well, there's a little bit of overlap. I'm All Right, Jack actually shows up in the documentary of The Ghost of Peter Sellers. There are excerpts of it, but of more interest, I think, is the fact that what is pointed out is that at one point when Peter Sellers is basically leading a mutiny of cast and crew against the director noticed that Peter Sellers was in character as his character from I'm All Right, Jack.
That's great. That's great. And you can really see, because wasn't that the Peter Sellers thing? I mean, he had no personality of his own. That was one of the reasons why he so wonderfully could inhabit all of these different characters.
The way they phrased it in the documentary is that he was actually very shy and uncomfortable with the other actors, and that the only way that he could feel comfortable was to assume a character. And obviously, if you'd already created a character for a movie, I think that was something that just allowed him a quick channel or something to channel. But there's, it was a... The Ghost of Peter Sellers is kind of an uncomfortable documentary to watch. I mean,
why is it uncomfortable?
Well, let me give a little background for people who are just listening. It's The Ghost of Peter Sellers, along with some other Peter Sellers movies like I'm All Right, Jack, which you were just mentioning, that are available on the Criterion Channel right now. And Peter Medak he's a Hungarian-born British film director. He had a big hit with The Ruling Class that came out in the early 70s. And off of the success of that, the next year in 73, he got paired up with Peter Sellers and Spike Milligan to shoot Ghost in the Noonday Sun. Now, it was meant to be a comedy about the misadventures of a 17th century pirate crew, but both the finished product and the production were just a complete mess. The whole thing was basically disowned by the studio. It was shelved. Later, it had a like 10 years later or something like that, it had an inconspicuous release on Betamax and VHS. That was around 85. Re-release again on DVD in 2016. So one of those things that clearly just got buried. And now the failure of Ghost in the Noonday Sun, it didn't kill Medak's career, but it did traumatize him. Still, he went on to direct The Changeling in 1980 and The Craze, which was a very interesting gangster film, in 1990. He's got over 20 films and a lot of TV shows in his credit. But now he returns to direct this documentary, The Ghost of Peter Sellers, and revisits the horrors of his experience on that. And it's a little bit like if Terry Gilliam had directed Lost in La Mancha, which was that 2002 accounting of Gilliam's then failed attempt at directing The Man Who Filled Don Quixote.
So who directed that? Who was somebody else? So he didn't direct. Somebody else directed that documentary.
No, it was I don't have the names here at my fingertips. I think it was two guys who were actually they had been brought on board, and I think their job had been to create some extra material that was supposed to be part of the bonus material on the the DVD.
Yeah, so they were acolytes then. So it is kind of the same.
Well, right, but they're both similar insofar as that they're both troubled productions beset by all kinds of problems, starting on day one. Now, in the case of The Ghost in the Noonday Sun, that film, they get a ship and gussy it up. It's an old boat. They gussy it up to look like a pirate ship, and on the very first day, the guy who was the captain who was captaining the ship just basically rides that ship into the ground and sinks it. Like it had and then you can just multiply those kinds of disasters. But what really they focus on is how much time and effort Peter Sellers spends into sabotaging the production.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah, he just didn't, he even though it was basically something that he had, Peter Sellers had, it was made because of him. They were given a bunch of money, not because of the director or the script. They were given a bunch of money because of Peter Sellers' involvement.
But that was true of all these films. That was true of Lolita. That was true of Dr. Strangelove. That's how they got Dr. Strangelove on, because Peter Sellers was going to play multiple roles in a comedy.
Yeah.
But presumably not I'm All Right, Jack.
No, I guess not, because I guess at that point they were still inventing his career. He was becoming a big star.
Right.
So I think I'm All Right, Jack was the more unique in that way, wasn't it?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, one of Peter Sellers' attempts to sabotage the production, like in the middle of filming an important scene, he basically has a heart attack. And this was very believable because he had previously suffered a heart attack and, went to it turned out he faked it. Like he faked a heart attack and then got whisked away to a hospital where he escaped and went off to socialize and do things. But, but I have to say, here's something so now when I got on Wikipedia, because I was trying to find the date of his previous heart attack, because in the documentary, what they said was that his actual heart attack, the real heart attack, not when he was filming this movie, but before that he had this real heart attack and that he was actually pronounced dead at one point. And I guess heart attacks go in his family. So, and I thought, well, this is interesting. And I got on Wikipedia, and it's his Wikipedia pages are so long, I didn't get a chance to dig up the exact date. But what I did find was that on the night of April 5 in 1964, prior to having sex with Britt Eklund, I guess would be his second wife, Sellers inhaled amyl nitrates as a sexual stimulant. And I'm reading from the Wikipedia page at this point. And he did this in search for the ultimate orgasm. And he suffered a series of 8 heart attacks over the course of 3 hours as a result.
I was trying not to laugh. Stop it, Alex.
Sorry.
Well, anyway, by the way, it goes on to say that his illness forced him to withdraw from the filming of Kiss Me Stupid, and he was replaced by Ray Walston, and that Wilder was unsympathetic about the heart attack, saying that you have to have a heart before you can have an attack. But anyway, that's an aside. And I will say just this is almost like an inside joke between with just amongst us, but I'll relay why. The first name, or sorry, the name of the first wife of Peter Sellers' first wife is Anne Howe. And it's something I'm just mentioning right now to you too, because we have a character in this script that we worked on who
who you invented, who had that name.
So just a coincidence, but I thought that was interesting.
Wow. So, well, that is very interesting. You guys are both prescient. Yeah.
Hey, can I ask a real quick question while I'm talking about things that are being screened via the Criterion channel? Alex, I went to the Criterion webpage, and they have a director-approved edition of Sid and Nancy on Blu-ray. And the question that I have for you, because I saw that one of the extras that's offered on this Blu-ray is I guess it's a commentary that you provided from 2001. And I recall you telling me that you had a commentary that was stripped of the US releases. But is that being brought back on this one, or is that a different
thing? I don't know. That has nothing to do with me. They were very naughty, actually, to say it was a director approved, because I never saw any of the elements of that package until it came out. Roger Deakins was in charge of surveilling the image, and he apparently looked at the image, but then he forgot there's one fade out in the film, and he forgot the fade out. And then I got an email from somebody, some enthusiast about the film, saying, "Where was the fade out at the end of the My Way sequence, the crucial moment before blah blah blah?" And sure enough, Roger had forgotten the fade out, and so it's this terrible embarrassment and shame to me. And so I haven't seen the elements. I don't know what they are.
All right. Well, the last thing I want to ask is that I just finished last night the first episode of a BBC series by Adam Curtis. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yes.
Oh, great. Well, it's are you familiar with
You're talking about the 6.5 hour one that he just came out with?
Yeah, Can't Get You Out of My Head. It's an emotional history of the modern world, a 6-part BBC documentary television series.
Nice work if you can get it.
Have you seen any of his stuff, or?
I've seen other things that he's done. I haven't seen. I'm not going to look at a 6.5 hour documentary. Have you seen any of his stuff, Todd?
No.
All right. Well, anyway, just an aside, and I didn't mean to step on you too much about the Peter Sellers film, because I am looking forward to seeing that one.
I think it's really worth watching because there is this sort of exaggerated style in the acting, which is very attractive and funny and good and conducive to humor, isn't there?
Well, there is, but let me say two things about the film that won't spoil it for you. One, check out one scene that Peter Sellers does completely silently in his lounge, which is one of his best acting moments I think I've ever seen. Yeah,
when he's playing the shop steward, the leader of the union.
Yeah.
And he's all alone. It's a good scene.
Yeah. And two, consider what the contrast is and what the conflict is, because while it's being presented as a conflict between workers and management, it isn't. It's obviously meant to be a conflict between a paradisical looking at life where life is joy and a world where life is nothing but transaction. And they have absolutely they never come to any kind of conclusion in the film. They just go back to the paradisical life that the hero is still terrified of. And that was what I found the most fascinating about the film, was that was the actual conflict and that was the setup. You'll see it begins in a nudist camp, which is really quite incredible. Alex tells me there were nudist camps at that point.
In England, if you can imagine it. Yeah, it was a big thing, I think, before the Second World War and even afterwards. Nudist colonies existed despite the weather.
That must be a very European thing. I mean, when I was in Germany in the early 80s, I just remember that was a very common thing, like just nudity on, over any lake you went to, everyone would just get naked and just and nothing wrong with that. But it was very. I mean, as a
and
teenager,
in the sauna in hotels in Germany.
Oh, they
as well.
still
You
do
all
that
get
in Germany,
there
yeah,
naked.
and in the swimming pool. I used to love going to German film festivals for that reason, but England, no. I mean, it quite startled me because everything else in the film is something that a person in England in the 50s would have immediately recognized, and so I was surprised, and I said, honestly, were there nudist colonies?
But that's but your analysis is actually a very good one about the difference between that kind of idealized and utopian world and the world of utter transaction.
Other transaction, and they link the utopian world to feminine values, because you'll see, pay attention to the women characters. They're all about family. They're all about, at one point, you'll love this, Pablo. At one point, Peter Sellers is lecturing the hero about how wonderful Russia is.
But it is wonderful because look, cornfields,
and ballet in the evening. And I must say, I've been using that line a lot around here. So, and his wife, oh, there go our dogs. You see, they heard the word Russia. They hear it so much around here. So his wife comes in and she says, Russia, Russia, Russia. That's all we ever hear around here. Have your tea. Which, really, that could have been taken from our house, probably, that line.
Yeah, I was saying, to myself when you said that, I bet that's something you commonly hear around the, Alex and Todd household.
That's right.
Or the DACA, as we call it.
The DACA, yeah.
Do you know anything about the directors? Because aren't they like, because the film came out in 1959 and the directors are twins, aren't they? Identical twins.
They're brothers, but one is the director and one's the producer, right?
Oh, okay.
John and
Roy. I believe Roy was married to Haley Mills. I believe.
And I when we did the Sid and Nancy film, the casting director Lucy Bolting was, I think, the daughter of one of those brothers. She was like English film history aristocracy.
And so Alex was really astonished because his impression of the Boltons had always been that
standard stuff, cheap, funny comedies, from the 50s. But no, it's very sophisticated.
And here is this thing that obviously Stanley Kubrick stole from.
Or was influenced by.
It was influenced by.
Right.
But it really is interesting. If you're a Kubrick fan, and obviously many people are interested in Kubrick, it's really worth seeing this as an influence on Lolita and Dr. Strangelove.
That is really true. You'll notice it in the first 15 minutes if you are a fan.
Well,
yeah.
I actually really can't wait to see it because I have to say that after watching the documentary on, the Ghost of Peter Sellers, it does not make me want to see Ghost in the Noonday Sun. The excerpts of that were just abysmal. So I'm going to point myself toward the work of John and Ray Bolting instead. And
John and Roy Bolting. Yeah. And I'm All Right, Jack is
I'm All Right, Jack.
Awesome. Quite an interesting film that was quite famous, but none of us had seen it. Neither of us had seen it.
Check out Margaret Rutherford's performance as
and
the
Irene Handel as the wife of Kite.
Oh my gosh, she's amazing.
Mother.
That was a great performance. Really, it was.
What's her character's name?
Her character's name is Mother, which also... It was a point. That was part of the point of the script, which is quite brilliant, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's really worth watching.
All right. Something to look forward to.
Cornfields and ballet in the evening. Just don't forget it, Pablo. It's very important.
I'm glad that your dogs weren't set off by the phrase just that moment.
No,
again,
it's the word. It's the word it refers to that will set them off again.
Okay.
We won't say it.
Well, listen, it's a pleasure as always to talk with you both. So, and I can't wait to see I'm All Right, Jack, and we'll talk about something else next week.
I look forward to it, and nice talking to you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Pablo.
Of course.
And cut. Okay, that's a wrap.
Thanks again for joining Alex Cox and myself today. I'd like to thank Jason Phelps for handling the audio and Ted Thacker for letting us use the intro to his song, The Ballad of Slim Cessna, for the musical cues that bookend these conversations.